of all the bad habits out there, smoking is definitely the worst one. It's expensive, it's bad for your health, it leaves you stinking, and it makes you uglier. Despite this, in the US and in the UK, 10% of adults smoke cigarettes, while 6% of adults smoke some sort of e-cigarette device. But the situation is much worse in Southern Europe, where as much as 40% of the adult population smokes. And I was one of them. I smoked for 12 years, but last year in 2025, I had my last cigarette and never looked back on it again. And in this video, I'm going to tell you how I did it. I started smoking when I was 13 years old, and I have photographic evidences of it. This is me in my Tumblr era. Lovely, isn't it? And if you're cringing looking at this, fear not, I am cringing more. Although I also think that we should embrace cringe, but that's a story for another time. If you're in the UK or in the US or in any other country where laws on underage smoking are taken seriously, then you probably think that this is mad, because in fact it is quite mad. However, unfortunately, this is quite normal in Italy, where, in case you don't know, I was born and raised, but really in Southern Europe in general, where at least when I was younger, there was no regulation on underage smoking whatsoever. I could go to a tobacco shop with that face, ask for cigarettes, and a 50-year-old guy would probably give them to me. No question asked. At the time, cigarettes were not only cheaper, but they were also more accessible, as I remember that we also had packs of 10 cigarettes that costed €2.50, so literally accessible to anyone really. And really, it was so easy for anyone that age to develop a smoking habit. And I think that both the under-regulation on underage smoking as well as the accessibility of cigarettes in general is what makes the prevalence of smoking in Southern Europe so high compared to other countries. Although I haven't looked at the study, this is just my personal interpretation of it, also from my experience. So literally, it was so easy for kids that age to develop a smoking habit. A smoking habit that will then be very hard to break later on in life. And if you're from, or if you've ever been to a Southern European country, you will know that a lot of people smoke, much more than in other countries. And I really realized this only when I moved to the UK, and I was realizing that people did not smoke here as much as I saw back home. And whenever I went back home, I realized that people were just smoking everywhere. Am I ashamed of this? Yes, absolutely. If I could go back in time and slap myself in the face, I will do that. But I also want to be kind with myself and just remember that as an adolescent, I was allowed to make mistakes and then regret them later on in life. That's the whole point of life, I think, in some respects. And overall, I'm really proud of myself because I managed to come through the other side. And really, the point of this video is to tell you how I did it. So if you're a smoker trying to quit, or really if you have any other kind of bad habit that you would like to get rid of, go and grab pen and paper so that you can take some notes. And whilst you do that, hi, I'm Brie, former smoker, trainee counselor, and pre-qualified psychologist working in London. Such a crazy curriculum, isn't it? On this channel, I share insight about psychology, as well as lessons from my life to help you live a healthier, happier, more productive life. So if that sounds like something that might interest you, then you should subscribe and stick around. I'm going to break down this video into two parts: what worked and what didn't work. And I know that your instinct is going to be to jump through what worked, but I really think that it is important also for you to hear what didn't work. Because I think that when it comes to breaking bad habits, most people will do the same useless things that I tried to do with obviously very little results. So I really want you to save some time and avoid making my same mistakes. So if you don't want to waste your time over the long term, be patient and stay with me. So what didn't work? Number one, saying, I don't smoke that much anyway. I bet you've heard this one before. This is amazing because after quitting smoking, I've tried to get some friends and family to quit smoking too. And this quote is by far the most common one I've heard. Now, to be completely honest with you, and as you can see, I've been really honest since the start of the video, I genuinely think that I never smoked that much. Even when I was living in Italy, where my cigarette consumption was the highest it has ever been, I used to smoke around 5 to 10 cigarettes every week. Maybe more if I had things going on over the weekends. When I moved to London, I reduced to a couple of cigarettes every week, to even a couple couple of cigarettes a month when I grow older. And considering that there are some people that smoke as much as 10, 20 cigarettes per day, I think that this excuse was particularly very true for me. But it was still an excuse. If I didn't smoke that much anyway, why not quitting entirely? These kinds of justification are what in psychology we call cognitive dissonance. This is when your brain goes into excuse mode, trying to justify a behavior that is not aligned with your beliefs or values. Taking the smoking example, let's say you are a smoker, but you also know that smoking is bad for you. Modern brain cannot really accept this dissonance because accepting it will be too distressing for you, because essentially you're doing a behavior that you know is going to harm you. So what does she do to avoid distress? She makes up excuses. I don't smoke that much anyway, I can quit whenever I want. Life is all about balance. Excuses. Just excuses that your brain is making up to avoid severe distress. This is not only related to nasty habits like smoking, but also to our everyday action. Let's say that you consider yourself to be a kind person, but then you shout at someone. Then maybe your brain is gonna come up with excuses like, I was just angry, or I did this because they did that. And this is cognitive dissonance in a nutshell. So the moral of the story is, even if it was true for me that I didn't smoke that much, I was still trying to justify a behavior that did not align with my beliefs or values. And it definitely did not help me smoke less or quit smoking entirely. But chances are, if you're watching this video, you are already past this point and you're starting to recognize that your bad habits are in fact a problem. So let's move on to thing that didn't work number 2, not wanting to make a definite decision. There was a point where I clearly remember saying, I'm going to reduce smoking, but I'm never going to quit entirely because I don't want to just give me a definite decision as to I don't want to smoke anymore. This decision was, yes, a step forward, but it still left me in a space where I would engage in that bad habit from time to time. And I think that this is addiction at its core. Not wanting to make a definite decision about the habit because that definite decision is going to be too distressing for my nervous system that has developed an addiction to tolerate. And related to this was mistake number 3 that I made, limiting smoking to certain situations only. When I decided that I wanted to reduce smoking without quitting, I decided that I was going to limit my smoking habit to certain situations only. In my case, whenever I was going on a night out and when I went back to Italy, that for me was, and in some respect it still is, a very, very big trigger because again, everyone around me was smoking. That was where I developed the habit in the first place. So some situations trigger my cravings. And instead of fight it, I decided that I was going to limit my smoking to these situations only. But guess what? I was still smoking. I was still damaging my health and just trying to satisfy my addiction without feeling too bad about it. But again, maybe you're past all of this. Maybe you have decided that you want to quit for good. In that case, you might have made the 4th mistake that I'm gonna talk about, that is swapping the habit with something else. You can be swapping the habit with a number of different things. The first one I want to talk about are vapes, IQOS, or any kind of e-cigarette devices that are out there these days. Some of these are also really aesthetic. I actually recently saw an IQOS that was golden pink, and I actually thought to myself, these are so nice. And it is true, they are actually so pretty compared to an ugly pack of cigarette, which I think now by regulation also need to be all exactly the same, at least in some countries. You might actually want to buy an IQOS or a very pretty vape, especially if that is sold as a healthier alternative to cigarettes. But guess what? We have no evidences that these devices are actually better for your health than cigarettes. They may be, I'm not saying that they're not, but they're just too recent for us to really know about the long-term effects, which we are probably just going to find out in 20-30 years. What I can tell you is that in my work as an assistant psychologist, I have seen patients developing lung infections for heavy vape use. Without mentioning that in some of those devices, you actually get a higher dose of nicotine than individual cigarettes, with some vapes reaching the same amount of nicotine that there is in an entire pack of cigarettes. And in all of this, nicotine is actually the thing that you are addicted to. So some of this stuff might actually increase your addiction to nicotine rather than cure it. Unless, of course, you're not reducing over time. But then again, there are still the issues about what is actually contained in these vapes and the long-term effect it could have on your health. And while cigarettes are an evil that we know, vapes and IQOSs are an evil that we don't. But I also try to replace the habit with something else entirely. For example, during a night out, if I wanted a cigarette, I will just have another alcoholic drink to help with the cravings.
Helps with the cravings.
The truth is, I was just replacing one bad habit with another really bad habit because I was unable to sit with the discomfort of being deprived of the thing that I was actually addicted to. And I guess the TLDR of all of this will be, you need to quit and you need to quit now. No excuses, no shortcuts, just quit. I know that this is painful to hear, but it's the truth. And at least it was the truth for me. So this is all what clearly didn't work. But now we're changing the mood and we're gonna talk about what actually worked. The part that you're all waiting for. So let's go. Thing that worked, number one, having a really strong why. Last year, I really started to tune into my fitness journey. If you want to know more about it, then you should definitely follow me on Instagram and TikTok, where I talked extensively about it. However, I soon realized that it wasn't really a fitness journey that I had to go through. It was a health journey. I quickly realized that smoking was actually preventing me from achieving my health, fitness, and even beauty goals. It made it harder for me to engage in aerobic activity. It was making it harder for me to lift heavy weights. It was keeping me inflamed, increasing bloating, acne, hair loss. And it was just something that I didn't want in my life. And also, I really like to live. A lot, and I really want to be around for a long time. And let's be honest, smoking is not really gonna help with that. And being passionate about living also makes me very passionate about not taking dangerous risks with my health unnecessarily. That's it. This was my why. I wanted to achieve my fitness, health, and beauty goals, which for me was extremely important. And also, I wanted to live. This might resonate with you or not. Your why is going to be very personal and very individual to you and to your situation. For example, some members of my family quit smoking when they were trying to get pregnant. This is a huge, amazing why to have. And it is a very strong one. You're not only trying to carry a child in a healthy way, but you also probably want them not to grow up in a house where people do have this nasty habit. You may not want them to smoke in the future, and you know that children do imitate adults. So if you're smoking, there is a higher chances that your children are going to smoke as well. Regardless of what it is, finding your why is a great place to start. But it is only a start. The next step is what really allowed me to fuel my motivation, that is changing my identity. James Clear, in his book Atomic Habits, explains how our habits are strictly tied to our identity. And starting or breaking a habit require us, to some extent, to change our identity. For example, you are not someone that wants to start running. You are a runner. You are not someone that is trying to quit smoking. You are not a smoker. And this process works both ways. You either perform or break an habit for long enough for it to change your identity. For example, if you start running every day, you will eventually consider yourself a runner. If you don't smoke for an extensive period of time, eventually you will not consider yourself a smoker anymore. Or you can change your identity in order to implement or break that habit. Let me explain this with my example. I was very into fitness and wellness and health in general, to the point that I started seeing myself as an extremely healthy person. I was exercising every day, I was eating well, I was limiting my sugar and alcohol intake. I found out about my own intolerances and made changes to my diet according to those. So overall, I considered myself to be a healthy person. And guess what a healthy person doesn't do? Smoking! This may be an unpopular opinion, but I believe that you can justify it as much as you want, but you are what you do repeatedly. And this was the hard truth that I had to swallow. And also the fire that motivated me to not smoke anymore. However, I could change my identity as much as I wanted, but remember, I was addicted. So the cravings were still there. I still wanted to do the habit and I was finding it very hard to resist it. And this is where the third thing that helped me came in. It is getting repulsed by the habit, i.e. making it unattractive. Again, James Clear talks about this in his book Atomic Habits. If you want to build a habit, make it attractive. So for example, go and get a nice cup of coffee after your run. And similarly, if you want to break an habit, make it unattractive. So I went full in. I started watching YouTube videos on the harms of smoking, about the corruption of the smoking industry. I read all about the nasty stuff in cigarettes, but also about the consequences of smoking on a health, financial, and social perspective. Whenever I could smell smoke in the streets, or whenever I could smell someone that clearly had just smoked because they had that stinky smell of cigarettes on them, I would think to myself, oh, that's disgusting. I was actually telling this to people in my life that smoked. Whenever they were smelling like cigarettes, I would be like, oh, that's so disgusting. And guess what? I was lying to myself, besides also making myself very unpopular with my loved ones, but that's another story. Because initially I didn't really mind the smell of cigarettes anyway, until I wasn't lying anymore. I can't say exactly when, but at some point, the smell of smoke actually started to repulse me. I had conditioned myself so much to be disgusted by the idea of smoking that at one point, I was actually disgusted by it. I became my own Pavlov dog, literally. And I guess these are the wonders of modern brain that, as I always say, can be our best friend or our worst enemy. Modern brain is plastic. So we can change and rewire the connection between our neurons at any point in our life to make it work for us instead of against us. And that was the end. That was the point when I was actually free of smoke. Until it wasn't, because there was one last thing that I had to go through that helped me quit smoking. That was having a sleep. Yep, I had a sleep and it actually helped. But let me cook. I quit smoking officially in March 2025. However, in May 2025, I went to Malaysia for a wedding. And there were a lot of people there that smoked. To be fair to myself, I managed to resist it for most of the trip until my very last night where I couldn't resist anymore. I had a couple of drinks and it happened. I asked someone for a cigarette and I smoked it. Actually, I smoked only half of it because despite me wanting that cigarette in the moment, probably triggered by all of the environmental cues around me, by that point I had changed my identity so much and I had conditioned myself to be repulsed by smoking so much that I couldn't even finish it. And that's when I found out that I actually couldn't do it anymore. Now, I want this to be very clear. I don't think that having a sleep is a necessary part of you overcoming an addiction or a bad habit. It was helpful for me and in my circumstances, but I know that for some people a sleep can become a slippery slope that leads you to be back stuck in the habit all over again. And to these people, I want to say, a sleep is just a sleep. Be kind to yourself. Getting out of addiction, whatever that addiction is very hard. And you are already making the first step, and the first couple of steps even, is great. You did a great job and you should be very proud of yourself. Sleeps are more common than you think. But the reality is, and this is also what I say to my client when I have run a substance misuse group in the past, if a sleep happens, let it just be a sleep. Don't make it the thing that leads you back to the habit all over again. Things are not black and white, and just because you slept once, it doesn't mean that you are a smoker, a drinker, or a user again. You can have a sleep and you can get back on track. And sometimes, as in my case, sleeps can help you get the thing out of your system for good. Now, I know that for some people, and especially for certain conditions, replacements are necessary, like methadone or lower dosage of some psychotropic drugs that you're taking. So again, this is not a universal advice. I'm just speaking for my situation. This is what worked for me. But if you're struggling with more intense, more difficult, more complex addiction, always seek advice from a health professional, because in certain circumstances, quitting cold turkey could be very dangerous. Use your own judgment, and I just want to believe that anyone watching this video actually has the common sense to understand what in this video fits or doesn't fit their situation. As things stand now, I've been smoke-free for 12 months and I have no intention of getting back to smoking again. But I would lie if I said that from time to time the cravings didn't come back. These happen sometimes when I am back home in Italy, where, as I said before, I might get in situations where my habit initially developed or where I am usually around more people that smoke that obviously trigger my cravings. This might also happen when I'm out drinking with a friend and there is someone smoking nearby. In those circumstances, what really helps me is reminding myself of my why, my identity, and just how disgusting the habit is, because honestly, it really is. But also having people around me that keep me accountable and support me in staying away from smoking. I have an amazing friend that probably will let me have a cigarette only over their dead body, and I am really lucky to have that. If you have people around you that you love and trust, then ask for their support, because it really is crucial in ensuring that you stay on track with your new life. And I guess this is also the reason why I'm posting this video. I hope that it can help someone getting out of a habit that is damaging their health or their life in some way. If that is you, please know that you're not alone, and I believe that you can do this. As a therapist, I believe that every human being has the potential of achieving great things. And think about all of the amazing things that you have already done in your life. Do you really want to let yourself be beaten by a cigarette? Really? That small thing? It doesn't stand a chance against you. And selfishly, I'm also putting this out there to keep myself accountable as well. It would be very embarrassing if with this video on the internet, I will go back to smoking in a couple of months. So I guess this helps everybody. But this is all I had to say for today. Thank you for staying until this point. If you want, you can share in the comment what is it that you're trying to quit in your life and how you're trying to do it. If you had a journey similar to mine, or if you're already quit an habit and you want to share tips with other people on how you did that, I think it is going to be very helpful for other people to understand that they're not alone, to get inspiration, or even to get some practical advices. Sometimes these small things are what helps people see the light at the end of the tunnel. If you like this video, you might also like this video here where I talk about 10 lessons from working out, or you may want to watch this video here that YouTube has picked up just for you based on your personal interest. So I will see you over there, or I will see you in my next video. Bye!